And the technology tells me that I am flying across the airwaves. This one's going to be fun, isn't it? I am juggling several spinning plates at this point. Spinning plates and UK telecommunication infrastructure, which is Thanos, one of our dear guests. So I'm hoping she'll be able to rejoin mid-episode. Here's hoping. In the meantime, it's Rail Natter. Hello. It's a delight to have you all along. It's Rail Week, and, well, I've been doing Rail Week stuff for 10 years now, more on that later, as has YRP, because the first one was in 2016. I wanted to talk about the rail industry, because I talk lots about what the structure of the industry should be. I don't talk, but here's my, it's me, by the way, hello. I don't talk about necessarily what the current structure is and how to navigate it if you want to get a job in it and what those jobs look like. And so I wanted a chance to actually plot the structure of the industry in some detail on screen. Key reason being is that directly employed by the GB Railway are 115,000 people. Indirectly employed, so people working for the GB rail industry at large, is estimated to be as high as 640,000 people. That is nearly 2% of the total UK workforce. That is a sizable chunk of people who work in the railways. And so this huge, complex, enormous mass of humans are organised around what they do, who they do it for. And the railway being a complex system means that the structure of the industry is consequently also quite complicated. And so tonight is all about unpicking it. A quick word to say thank you to all the lovely Patreon people who support Rail Natter to continue being a thing. If you are interested in that sort of thing, patreon.com/GarethDennis to find out what that's all about. Without further ado, everyone, welcome to tonight's Rail Natter. And as the In-City 225 fades away, look at that, 295 bloody episodes. It's the railways. Look at them. They're complicated. They are immensely high stress from a kind of stressing the asset perspective in the UK. They're incredibly labour intensive as a result of the way that we run our railways. They're also extremely effective. They are some of the safest railways and highest density service of railway in Europe. It's a spectacular railway system we run. And part of the reason why I get so frustrated, because it's so close to being very, very good, and lots of decisions often pull us away from that point. But the railway is complicated, and within the railway are lots and lots of humans. And I'm going to hope that we might have some guest name title issues. In fact, those being that Katie is currently named two things at the moment. But joining us are some people from the rail industry who are going to introduce themselves. Georgia might introduce herself a little bit later on if the technology allows her to return, which I very much hope it does. But first, Katie Williams, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and what you do within the railway industry.
My name is Katie Williams. I am in YRP, the Wales chair, and then also I'm an assistant project manager in the transport planning and development team at Transport for Wales.
Oh, fantastic. There's a strong Welsh fan kind of segment of following along with Rail Natter, partly because we do lots of Welsh stuff, partly because, as I forget now, because I hear it in my ears, not so much from Ivor the Engine, but, we have Ivor the Engine as the theme tune. So yeah, nice to have you along, Katie. Kostas, if you want to introduce yourself.
I'm Kostas, and I am a degree apprentice signalling engineer working on renewals in the Northwest and Central region, and that's accompanied with my university degree at Sheffield Hallam. So a mix of everything at the minute.
Yeah, nice. I was actually delivering a PWI session at Sheffield Hallam yesterday evening. So yeah, so it's the day release, the block release for some of the engineers. So yeah, I was helping deliver some material in the evening. So yeah, and Georgia, I'm very much hoping will rejoin later, and we'll give Georgia a chance to introduce herself when she does. And when that happens, everyone, forgive me for juggling around guests and viewers and podcast listeners in the future as well. Apologies for me then dancing around like a lunatic, making everything work. But we're going to press ahead because we want to talk about the structure of the industry. And the key thing, the way to start is, well, firstly, it's complicated and it's chaotic and might involve some level of, well, it's going to involve starting with a nice white blank sheet of paper, frankly. So let's start there. And in fact, when we talk about the rail industry, lots of diagrams exist that are, in fact, let's briefly get our faces back again, because lots of diagrams talk about the structure of the rail industry. Start with, let's start with this organization, or let's start with the network rail, or start with the train operator. Etc. I'd like, no, the railway is there to move people and things. And so it makes sense for us to start with, well, let's start with passengers first of all. And so the way I'm going to structure this diagram is, what are the things, what is the distance from the people and the things, the freight customers? The distance from those people is how I've created this structure, this way to kind of structure out and show the structure of the industry. So passengers, what are the things that passengers do? Well, they generally get onto a train. That's what defines them being rail passengers. And so we have our train operators. Within the train operators, and of course to the guests, shout at me, interrupt me when you want to add anything in here. But so we have the train operators. And of the train operators, we have got devolved operators like, these are supposed to be little, by the way. Don't expect to read these. We've got, at the top here, we've got ScotRail, we've got TFW, Caledonian Sleeper, which is also kind of ScotRail. We've got a whole bunch of either being or soon to be or already are gobbled up by the Department for Transport's operator train operating companies. And then we have a bunch of open access operators that are going to fall outside of that, the likes of Hull Trains, Lumo Grand Central, Eurostar, Heathrow Express. And so those are our train operators. Not within there are charter operators, by the way, as well. They're absolutely fit within that. So the heritage and charter operators. But there's only so much space on a screen. But you don't just get on a train. You might buy a ticket, and you might buy a ticket from a train operator, but also you might buy a ticket from a third-party vendor. And those third-party vendors might be, Trainline is a well-known one, Real-Time Tickets, Tom Cairns' baby, Trenitalia, and lots of other European vendors that dish out train tickets. But also there's the commercial vendors who do things, Capita and the others as well, who do these things for business as well. So, you may buy a ticket from a third-party vendor. If things go wrong, you might want to complain to the rail ombudsman as a passenger. And you might generally want your opinion to be heard about the railway service that you have and experience through Transport Focus, which is the body that manages and collects data on passenger perception of the rail industry. So as a passenger, this is kind of what the railway looks like to you. This is your experience of the railway for the most part. There are nuances and subtleties we'll get into. But if you have a thing, an object you want to move around, then you're a freight customer. And the picture's a little bit less complicated in some ways and substantially more complicated in others for you if you're a freight customer. So yes, your thing will go onto a train operated by one of the freight operators. And there are a fair few of those. It's diversifying year on year. But you also have a body that you can interact with that advocates for you and generally is your ally and also hunts out opportunities and solutions for you, which is Rail Freight Group. The very active Rail Freight. They are a trade body, but they do more than that. They are very active in creating opportunities and representing freight customers as well as the freight operators and the logistics chain. So there, if you like, is the front line. So the front line of the railway. Now you don't want to see my medium face. You want to see everyone again. So, Katie might be here. No, Georgia might be here. I'm getting confused by my own names. Georgia. Oh, right. Okay. Let's see if I can make this technology work. Hello. I have. Right. I need to do some name swapping. Okay. I knew I'd need to do this. Right. Everyone get ready. So this is flying by the seat of the pants. This is the bit where James, my production manager, is like, oh, guys. Okay. So, and let's see if the Welsh, not Welsh internet, actually. Georgia, where are you geographically?
I'm in the West Midlands, so I'm just in Birmingham.
Oh, so Birmingham internet. Don't let us down again. Come on now. Right, so
we connected to my phone, so hopefully it won't let us down.
We're just going to destroy your minutes. That's what we're going to do. Okay. So, okay. Let me just make the technology work. There we go. There we are. Critical beep. So that now should be... Oh, I'm flying by the seat of my pants, but we're getting there. So everyone. Oh, Georgia, is it Georgia? While we have the technology deciding to or not to work, would you like to introduce yourself, please, while I make sure it's all working technologically?
Yes, brilliant. So I'm Georgia and I'm part of this frontline team that was just explained. So I work for London North Western and West Midlands Railway, and I've been in the rail industry for about 18 months, and I started their graduate scheme in September 24. So within that scheme, it's just a 12-month scheme where I had 2 structured placements in property and stations. And then I got to choose where I spent the rest of the time. So I went to marketing, timetabling and planning, drivers, control, customer experience strategy. And then my scheme came to an end and I've stayed on at the company, and I now sit within the customer experience strategy team, working with our insights manager. And I basically look at taking our customer insights, informing them amongst our internal teams, and then also translating them into targeted initiatives for operational teams, and ultimately just looking at how we can inform teams to better improve the passenger customer experience, basically.
And the fun thing that you told me when we were in the green room before starting was, you said, I don't know anything about the rail industry structure. And you're sort of like, I haven't worked it out yet still. And I'm glad, because as someone who's been in it for a very long time, it's still nebulous and chaotic. I still haven't worked it out fully because it's so huge. So yeah, we started talking about how many people are employed. So yeah, Georgia, thank you so much. And hopefully your your mobile provider keeps their end of the bargain up. So right, we have a full house. Look at this. Look how many guests we have. It's very exciting. Right, so I digress. We have got the front line then. So there is our front line. But, we're missing something here, which is, well, a variety of things. We're missing, for starters, trains, because at the moment we just have the staff that provide the trains. Some of the freight operators have their own bits of train, but not their entirety of their trains. And so at the moment we don't really have any trains or tracks. So, okay, let's get some trains involved. So the rolling stock operators provide a sizable chunk of the trains running on the rail network. They run trains for, they lease trains to both freight operators and train operators. So if I'm going to start my bits of red string, they send trains in all directions. But the rolling stock manufacturers are also a key part, because whilst obviously the leasers they buy the stuff through finance from the rolling stock manufacturers, the rolling stock manufacturers also directly supply the train operators, whether it's for new trains or maintaining trains. And then you also have dedicated rolling stock maintainers. So all of a sudden, to get your trains, suddenly you're saying, oh, crikey, that's a bit of a complicated corner of things then. But at the moment, we have nowhere to put the trains, because also you have to have some track. And most of the track in Britain is owned and managed by Network Rail. Little Network Rail here, which is actually an enormous organisation. So, yeah, so you've got Network Rail. And also, I'm cheating a little bit, because passengers might also see Network Rail staff at the Network Rail managed stations. So they might have a little bit of direct interaction with Network Rail. Fine. So what else then? Because you can't just have track and then install it, or it doesn't just exist in isolation. You have to maintain it. You have to come in as a construction contractor to build new bits of it, to replace bridges, to replace all the things, upgrade stations. You need legal providers, you need land and property providers, technology providers, comms providers. I mean, this is barely scratching the surface. This box here represents thousands of suppliers, with greater or lesser extent private entities, that supply pretty much everyone on screen at the moment, and also lots of people who are about to appear on screen. So that's a sizable chunk of third-party sort of private suppliers that provide the industry. But there they are. What else do you need? Well, okay, you might have... So you've got all these vendors, you've got all these train operating companies, but the tickets cost a number, and you might travel on multiple train companies. And also the information, the data of the systems coming through Network Rail has to somehow get sent out to all these people, and that's coordinated through the Rail Delivery Group with an increasingly diminished role. The RDG there are a part of making that system work. Also administering services is a bunch of devolved transport bodies. So you've got the obvious ones of Transport Scotland and Transport for Wales, but you also have the plethora of other ones. You've got these sub-national transport bodies, don't get attached to them. And then you've got a bunch of combined authority transport bodies, of which some have been around for ages and some are quite new. So TFGM's been around for absolutely ages. TfL, people will know very well, of course. TfWM is increasingly familiar. But there are some other new players as well, like Tees Valley, MCA, These are, Mersey Travel is very well known, as well as being a train operator themselves. Nexus Britannia Metro. So these devolved bodies are also part of the rail industry, and to some extent in the future will, I would hope, start taking a greater control over their own rail services as well. Then slam into the middle of this, Great British Railways, and underneath these is a logo I forgot to add, which is the DFTO, which is the operator part of the DFT that's kind of attached to this GBR thing. Well, there's no GBR yet, but there is Shadow GBR, and it's sitting, nestling itself. It's currently still symbiotically attached to Network Rail, so it's really just an offshoot of Network Rail at the moment. Shadow GBR is sort of squeezing its way in to take over bits of the rail industry that we'll get into in the future, but it does exist, and it's having an increasing role even before some of the primary legislation starts landing. The DFT, of course, has a major role to play because it is the thing that coordinates Network Rail, it coordinates Shadow GBR, it coordinates all sorts, so it sits above everything. It nominally should and does set strategy, but also so too at an equal footing to the Scottish Government and Welsh Government. So the actual government, not the transport authorities, but the actual Scottish and Welsh governments have their role to play. The ORR, if you've got all this stuff, well, it's all very well the DFT being in charge of it all, but how do you control disputes between different passenger operators and freight customers? And also, how do you regulate the funding settlement for Network Rail? Well, that's what the ORR exists to do. So the Office of Rail and Road sits there. Oh, and you might want, okay, EDF, what? What are EDF doing here? EDF are the single largest supplier to the railway because they're the ones who provide all of our electricity. They are our electricity supplier, and we spend hundreds of millions of pounds on electricity. So they, in their own right, are a nominally private, I'm using massive rabbit ears here, nominally private organisation that's in charge of sending electricity into our electrified railways and our railway stations and so on and so on. So thank you, French government, for that. So it's another government body that just happens to be a private entity in the UK. And of course, in charge of all of this is Treasury. I'm hearing boos in the audience, but fine, that's fine. So, right, I'm going to briefly pause there and go to our guests and say, is this all making sense? Does this match your understanding so far of what we're going through? It's a little bit, I'm doing the manic kind of pinboard string thing on this screen, but we're kind of halfway through. But the next bit should go a bit more quickly. But that's okay. So we've got passengers and freight customers able to get people and things on trains. We've got tracks to put them on. We've got signals to move them around. We've got signalers to send the trains safely in all directions. We've got a strategy and devolved transport bodies telling what the trains need to be doing. We've powered the electric railway. We've funded it all. Thank you, Treasury-ish. Right. Okay. Well, what's next then? So you've done all that. Well, there are a bunch of, if you've got the Treasury funding things, well, they like to have greater control over, that's me, I don't know why my face has appeared there, let's get rid of that. They like to have control over their major capital projects, so you've then got nominal quangos of East West Rail and HS2 Limited. Also, you've got this new thing called Platform 4, which is what London Continental Railways and Network Rail's property body has been merged recently into. No idea what that's actually going to look like, but it's kind of its own quango now. So you've got these things that are kind of basically directly connected to Treasury. Okay, fine. The thing is, you've got all of that industry, and a lot of it requires a bunch of services to exist. A lot of it, unfortunately, relies on contingent staff, not least the construction contractors, but also some of the train operating companies, and some of the maintainers and manufacturers. So then you need some staff. You also need someone to design the railway. You need to manage facilities. You've got to hire plant and equipment. So you've got a bunch of other stuff and people landlords that you have to hire stuff off as well. So they're another sizable chunk of the industry over there. Now, if you've got all those people, they've got knowledge and skills. And look, it's YRP. I'm hearing lots of cheering and clapping because, yes, there's YRP as a professional network among people. But also you have NSAR, which is related to kind of growing the National Skills Academy for Rail. You've got the bodies that manage standards and innovation. So you've got the Railway Safety and Standards Board, the Railway Safety and Standards Board, but also the kind of the tram version of that. You've got UCRIN, which is the collective of universities that directly is plumbed into the railway, and you've got Innovate UK dishing out innovation cash, and you've got the professional bodies. So, my beloved Permanent Way Institution, soon to be the Rail EI. You've got CIRO, you've got RSE, IMEC, IET, ICE, knowledge and skills. These are the bodies that protect those things. But also, you've got the universities and colleges that feed, that update standards, that provide us research, but also provide us clever people in the form of graduates and apprentices. There's a gap on my thing. I'm getting there, folks. I'm getting there. I told you it was complicated, and I'm getting increasingly manic, and the string is getting tied around my thumb. Oh, yeah, don't forget, if things go wrong, you need to have knowledgeable people that can identify why they've gone wrong, and that's where the RAIB come in, the Rail Accident Investigation Branch. If you've got lots of people, they rightly should be represented, everyone join a union, by unions. So you have the RMT, you have the TSSA, you have Unison, you have ASLEF, and as we'll talk about in a minute, the NUJ counts in this because we have journalists within our rail industry as well. So, and that's not an exhaustive list of the unions, the trade unions who represent all of the staff who work on the railway. That covers a sizable chunk of them. But you also, if you've got a load of commercial entities, they want trade bodies. They want to be plugged into government and attempting to lobby why the railway is an important thing. So you have RIA, Rail Forum, the Rail Supply Group, and the Rail Wagons Association. Don't forget those guys. Whew, people are telling me to breathe in the chat. Thank you, everyone. Yes. So you have the trade bodies that represent most of the organizations in some form or another on here and kind of basically represent them to government, to central government and the devolved government bodies. And then you've got local authorities that interact with the devolved transport bodies and with central government and directly with train operators and with Network Rail. And you've got, on top of that, the community rail network that manage some of those smaller lines for their community value. And now, is there anything else? Yes, our beloved Railway Press, because don't forget them, they are also in here, which is why I put the NUJ in, because they are the ones who, in a way, hold the railway account. One of the various ways that the railway is held accountable is through the Railway Press. So, there is, oh my goodness, I got there. So my dear guests have been sat watching very quietly and with no challenges, which I hope is because nothing's horribly wrong yet. Whew, anything in there that you think I've missed? I know I've missed Charter Services and Heritage Rail Association and a couple of associated bodies, but anything you think I've missed in that chaos, everyone?
Well, Gareth, I think I'm going to throw a spanner in the works here.
Good, yes.
So I work for Network Rail, and I'm seeing a logo for Network Rail, but at the same time, there's stuff going on there that is just as complicated as these devolved transport bodies. So we are a devolved organisation ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
So from my experience as a project engineer, I have to go and speak to the pre-team, the ones who manage the route, and that's where I'm figuring out what needs doing, like what projects need to be created, and specifically for me, what needs to be renewed in terms of signaling. So through that, you can start to see the connections.
Even Network Rail is this immensely nebulous and complex organization in and of itself, let alone the rest of the, as you say, Network Rail itself split into routes and regions. Those split into various functions. You've got the centralized functions, route services, system operator, engineering services. Yeah, Network Rail in and of itself fills one of these and then another one again. And I dare say so do the train operators on an individual basis. So yeah, Network Rail has probably the most complex organization on here. Someone challenged me on that. I think probably Network Rail is the most complex organization. But yeah, Kostas, you're absolutely right. It's an absolutely spot-on challenge that I've represented the entirety of 45, 50,000 plus contingent staff with just the little Network Rail icon in the middle there. But yes, it is complicated.
That's a good thing for the point that we're trying to raise here. We're talking about the complications with GBR, and we've got all these companies, and we've got so many of them as well. And they're all little tiny logos. But under this GBR structure, we have to form all these or a lot of these companies into one body. And how's that going to look like?
Well, exactly. It's a fair challenge. So I'll come back to everyone else, but yes, it's a good stepping off point because we are in the process of doing that. And it's a good chance to sort of say, we're in the process of forming GBR, right? Slowly catchy monkey, but we are doing it. And the logic behind GBR is essentially that we're going to take those regulated train operators and those are going to merge with, we already have Shadow GBR, that'll take over, and we'll essentially see Network Rail and the RDG kind of disappear. Some of the functions of DFT are already moving into Shadow GBR and Network Rail, so we'll take some functions, not all functions, from DFT, and you'll create this new organisation, Great British Railways. You will, of course, end up with a bunch of non-GBR operators sort of sat outside of that box that we need to think about. I suppose one thing that's interesting here, Kostas, and others, is a huge thing is being made about GBR, but this diagram shows how much of the railway won't be touched by GBR. There's this enormous amount of railway that GBR still is only, is not necessarily, touch it. For example, trains themselves, GBR is not going anywhere near, or not in the short and medium term. But it just shows how much industry there is beyond GBR still, despite that. There's a couple of other chains I wanted to just talk about, though. One of those is bye-bye to the subnational transport bodies. We barely knew ye. TfN, I think, just about surviving somehow, doing its own thing, but that's fine. The other thing I wanted to say is HS2 obviously is time limited anyway, and East West Rail is getting gobbled up by Network Rail. So this is the final picture, I think, or is it? And I've returned to our guests to see whether Katie and Georgia think I've missed anything else on there. Go on, Katie.
Sorry. I think in the skills section, there's so many other bodies that due to different careers. For example, I'm a project manager, therefore I work with the Association of Project Management.
APM, of course,
and then we also work with different skills like Design Commission for Wales on placemaking and what a station feels like and how will people interact with actually transport in general. So I think that's what I thought about it when looking at your diagram.
Absolutely. And you've got REBA as architecture, and you've got BREEAM, which regulates our stations. Cambridge South Station opening at the moment with very high BREEAM sort of rating. Therefore, we've interacted with we've got British Standards Institute. Yeah, it's like you're right. Suddenly, it's like whoa, wait a minute. There's so many, and BTP is not on here. So there's
it goes further and further and further.
I know.
You can't fit it on one slide.
Now, Georgia, given your understanding, you said, and I don't believe it for a second because I'm sure you've got a pretty good handle on the industry. You're underselling yourself. Does this kind of match with your understanding of kind of what you think, what you've seen of the industry is?
No, absolutely. And I think I definitely have reflected a lot during my grad scheme, but I didn't realize how many of the stakeholders I have actually touched upon and interacted with within each of the different departments at London North West and West Midlands Railway. But I definitely thought when you were talking through the structure, I thought you'd forgot about trade unions because they're just so hugely important in terms of the top world. So in my head, they would have been positioned much closer to train operators. So I just thought you must have forgot about them. But yeah, no, you definitely, and all of the contingent staff who make sure that we've got safety officers on our stations, the cleaners on our stations or on board, and all of the community work as well. So I think you definitely covered many people who I have touched upon, and this is exactly the structure I would have envisioned.
And the logic of what I've put in theory, it's like, so the unions are kind of up the top, not necessarily because they're distant from the train operators, but because for passengers and freight customers, they are a little bit further, they are abstracted, and similar to the university colleges. If you're a passenger, probably one of the last things you're thinking about is Sheffield Hallam University or Northumbria or Edinburgh University as you hop onto your train. But those, so in a way, I was trying to think, right, I always try to make the point that we should think primarily about the people we're moving around and the freight customers for whom we're moving their stuff around. So that's kind of why I structured this. But very quickly, when you're working on 1920 by 1080 pixels, you're like, oh, this is messy already. I was imagining some wonderful, simple to visualize pyramid, and it degraded rapidly. So there we have it. There's the structure of our industry. There is one thing, right? So I'm just going to briefly go in here because there is something that I wanted to talk about, which is I think a little useful thing. It's my big face that you have to put up with this. The dear guests are in the background. Something that for our guests I thought might be interesting, if you don't know about this, is you can get hold of the money spent against and this is Network Rail, not the others, but again, Network Rail, generally these numbers are the biggest for Network Rail versus anyone else. Basically, the top 20 suppliers for Network Rail. I thought it'd be interesting to point out who those are, because this covers some of those private companies that I kind of put into a dashed line fairly dismissively. But so, EDF is at the top. We spend £700 million on EDF a year. to get electricity from. That's a sizable old chunk of power. But second on that is £450 million is Siemens Mobility. So that's for signaling, electrification, construction, trains. There's a whole load of things that Siemens, depots, a whole load of stuff that Siemens provide there that we pay them for. Consultancy work. Murphy's, as a major construction contractor, a third on that list, the third supplier. Amco is fourth on the list. BAM Nuttall fifth. BAM, again, a big contractor. So that's four major contractors who mostly are doing infrastructure construction of some kind. Colas and Story and Balfour BT coming up to 6, 7, and 8, a sizable chunk. Octavius Infrastructure Limited. I have no idea who Octavius Infrastructure Limited are. Any guests? Can you help me out? Or Google it while I'm going through the rest. I have no idea what Octavius does. Someone's about to tell me anyway. In the chat. Everyone in the chat or in the comments, tell me. And then you go into some of the... So SPL Powerlines are doing electrification. So they are funded to do or were funded to do electrification. So that's 160 million. Alstom as a signalling provider and a train manufacturer there, but I guess for Network Rail that's mostly for signalling. Then Amy, BAM Nuttall, but just for so there's these weird like Transpennine route upgrade only fund bits that the railways. You see what I mean? It gets complicated in that they get their own special entries because they're just doing TRU stuff. Balfour BT appearing again because they're on a different alliance. Then Colas again. Oh my goodness. N-Power Commercial Gas. So there's our gas supplier. All of a sudden, wait, gas? Yeah, well, we're spending £135 million on gas. And then we get to consultancy world. Atkins Realis as a consultancy that gets the most money as a designer. So my old employer Atkins. QTS are a plant supplier. Alexander Mann Solutions currently pay me. They do the human resources who are contingent labour into Network Rail funding. So that's them sitting there. And then Volker Rail are a contractor. So gives you an idea of the complexity. And the last bit that I'll do on this is 7,000 or the best part of 7,000 suppliers to Network Rail alone. So yeah, that is a enormous, it's just a huge number of suppliers as that kind of whizzes along. It's a big and complicated railway that I've summarised rather briefly for everyone there. So I think that's quite enough of me ranting. Oh no, there is one last thing, which is it's different in Northern Ireland. Everyone, this is different in Northern Ireland. Just as an FYI. So that was a bit of a download, wasn't it? Oh my goodness! Anything anyone wanted to add on that? Any thoughts on some of the supplier side things and sort of seeing some of those numbers? I mean, we're spending a sizable chunk of money on those bodies. Yeah.
So like you've just shown on the figure, we've had the 7,000 suppliers, but as the figures show, the money is going to a certain few most of the time, and I think it's a question that you'd have to raise, especially the contractors raise it to us all the time about where's the work, when's the work coming. And sometimes being inside the business, you can start to see sort of some of the problems. So, for example, Siemens are up there, and I'm going to speak strictly on a signalling basis here.
Yeah.
And a lot of our works, we're kind of forced to go to Siemens because of all their proprietary software.
Yep.
And the protocols that they use in their software cannot work with any other equipment. So it's more of a question to marketing, like market competitiveness and the rules within a market, because these proprietary softwares we're stuck with.
It's interesting because what we're getting is kind of almost, and this is just, I mean, this is big picture capitalism stuff. Hello, welcome to Rail Now. That's what we do. But it's like, yeah, we're getting the worst of like, it's a big monopoly, which is arguably what you'd get if it was just provided by the state. But we're not getting, but it's a private company, so you're paying all those the extra odds for it being a private company and doing everything that it does. So yeah, and it's an acknowledged thing. The EU is acknowledging the fact that there is a challenge with this creation of a monopoly, the fact that so much of our signalling system across Britain is relying on two suppliers, and lots of those suppliers have their own empires and they don't interact, and therefore you can't really swap them out. So arguably you only have one. It's a challenge, and that's something that the industry is acknowledging and is attempting to tackle. But I think we're preoccupied with rail reform at the moment, but I think that particularly with signalling at the rate of renewals being a bit of a not quite quick enough, it's something that we're going to have to tackle. That complexity, from Georgia, I come back to you from your perspective. To what extent do you think passengers care about the complexity? Do you think? What are your thoughts on that? Because it's not just that they don't care; they want to get on the train. Because we've seen with social media and the interaction with some of those, Twitter threads that are done by train operating companies and Network Rail, that actually there is an interest by passengers on what goes on in the railway. So again, what are your thoughts on that side of things?
I think I'd argue that they don't care. It is the argue of one team. And they don't, even just looking at New Street alone, we have so many different train operators operating there, and they don't know the difference between an Avanti staff member, a cross country, a West Midlands Trains, and a Network Rail member. They're ultimately looking to arrive at their destination on time for an affordable price with a safe experience. So I think, it's such a complex picture, and it is great that there's educational pieces taking place so that everybody is understanding the railway. But ultimately, I don't think that actually impacts the services that we all are working together to deliver.
Katie, the reason this is joyous, by the way, dear viewers and listeners, is that we kind of have a representation from infrastructure, from operator, and from client, essentially, from the brains of the operation. Katie, from your side, what are the challenges that complexity throws up, and are there opportunities that balance those out, or is that complexity something that is a challenge from your side as you see it and the work you do?
I work as a secretariat for a contract, so supplies is probably my bag, but it can kind of get confusing a little bit. I don't know how to answer that.
It's one of those things, isn't it, where like, I suppose the thesis of the episode for me is the railway is complicated, and so you're never going to avoid it having a complicated organizational structure, because whether it's, just as Kostas said, whether it's under one heading of GBR or Network Rail, the complexity is still there because the railway system is an enormous complicated machine that requires 640,000 people to keep working. So it is interesting. Right, I'm gonna take the opportunity to briefly. We've done a massive information download now, so it's a chance to do something a little bit more lighthearted, and to go back to some slides that I did in 2016, so 10 years ago for Rail Week, and see if any of them are even remotely close to being correct or not. Now, the first, it's like, okay, what jobs are there in the rail industry? And I was told, right, okay, can you think of a way to visualize lots of different jobs? And I was like, well, okay, I'll take some pictures of the railway, or some stock photography, should I say, of the railway, and I'll kind of go, well, what jobs are there that I can see in that image? There's Birmingham New Street, by the way. Awful station. Right, so here is the lovely Borders Railway. Funny, in 2016, this was new. It's not so new anymore. It's very, very well used. So now I'm going to go through a few things, and I want my dear guests joining me to either laugh at me for the ones I've suggested or suggest others. But I'll go through a few. So I'll whiz through a few of these, and then when we get to the end of the pictures for this one, you can tell me some of the ones you think I might have missed. But this is not exhaustive, of course. It's just some idea. So, front of train, one of the things, well, okay, train driver is pretty obvious. Ergonomic specialist to make sure that the train layout actually works for your driver. And the designer of the signalling system, signalling designers. Jump back to the track. Well, okay, you've got me as a track design engineer, but also you need a track access planner to fit the trains around each other. You need to have people who can do land purchase and specialists in way leave when you're building a new railway. Inside the train, you've got graphic designers, chefs, of course. If you've got a catering service on there, it'd be nice if the Borders Railway had catering like that, crikey. You've got web developers to make sure that the kind of the apps and the tech works. And then you've got train managers on the train, make sure everything works smoothly for the passengers on that train. You've got environmental engineers, ecologists, landscape architects dealing with all the boundary and all the biodiversity that we have within our and slightly beyond our boundary, and also understanding how that impacts on the engineering, drainage being a good example of that. And tied to that, you've got engineering geologists, you've got geotechnical engineers who actually get the earth to work, and the meteorologists who work out how much we're going to have to move rain and water off the railway to keep it working. And it goes on. You see there's diversity in jobs here. So you've got structures inspectors, bridge engineers, listed building specialists, gauging engineers to make sure trains don't hit them. It's just an unending supply of, Georgia, to your point, it's like when you came into in fact, all of you, when you came in, knew Kostas, you and Katie, when you all, and me, I've been around, I don't know how long I've been in this industry now, it's best not to count, but not long enough, and also plenty of years. The scale and the diversity of jobs is something that I love. I love the diversity. I love that within the rail industry, you pretty much have every single type of job there is pretty much covered off. So if you're interested in railways, but you're not sure what you're actually, like, I want to work in the railways, but I don't know what I want to do, or, I've got these skills, but that's not engineering, or that's not, I don't know, I don't think I could drive a train. There will be I suppose for me, I always wanted to make that point, and I did in 2016, there is a job out there for you, right?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. And I think you just said, if you're interested in railways, and you don't even necessarily have to be interested in railways or train or fleet, there's just so many jobs that anyone can be doing, and so many transferable skills from other industries that are so welcome within the rail industry. But also, if you end up within the rail industry, you'll learn so much and so many transferable skills that you can always move out elsewhere as well. So
absolutely, yeah. So let's go to King's Cross again. It's funny, like, I'm aging it because it's 2016. I'm like, what's the new stuff that's appeared fairly recently on the railways? And it was like the umbrella at King's Cross, which is now like just part of the scenery, is in there. So yeah, that's like, okay, so you've got customer relations, you've got pedestrian flow modelers if you're in a station, you've got occupational support for those who actually work on the railway. You've got marketing and sales, public engagement specialists, advertising, portfolio managers to, squeeze a bit of extra cash out of the railway. Don't make the billboards too big, etc. There's this little chap down here with a phone. You've got app designers, the social media response team, increasingly important. Actually, it's funny, increasingly important, and then as Twitter gets more and more destroyed, possibly like diminishing importance again. But still, at the moment, the Twitter teams are out there being very helpful when there's disruption. You've got the BTP providing support where necessary. You've got, jump to the boards saying where the trains are going. You've got timetable planners, train dispatchers, performance modelers. You've got station communications designers working out, right, how do we best communicate this information? Is it right that it's done with the old dot matrix yellow signs, or are there better ways to tell this story? We've seen, since 2016, we've seen the kind of the 2D and holographic sign language sort of boards starting to emanate. So that we've seen the diversity in the way that we present that information to passengers, which is kind of exciting. Shout at me and chip in, by the way, dear guests, if you've got thoughts on anything. Just shout in my ear. When you've got stations, you've got property surveyors, you've got retail liaisons to deal with the fact you've got shops and food chains in there, commercial managers to manage all those things. And then you've got the actual station building itself. You've got structural engineers, architects, lighting designers. You've got sound designers to work out, right, how did you get the speakers to work so that the tannoy, so the public announcer doesn't create a horrible echo and sound like sludge. CAD technicians to draw the designs up, So there's just an unending, there's just these slides. They're kind of 2016. Okay, the slides are kind of holding up. It ages them because I did the slides in 4:3 aspect ratio, which really ages them. So yeah, right. So I'm going to whiz through the last lot. In fact, you know what? I think everyone gets the point. So I'm just going to, if you want to see the rest of those, then let's save it for a bonus episode, because I think we've done lots of yakking, and I want to give you guys a chance to talk again. So as I bring back, as I kind of behind the scenes bring back the big, no, that's just my large face. You can tell everyone that I'm flying by the seat of my pants. Here is our big, complicated industry. I suppose one of the things I wanted to draw on before we go to questions, because I'm going to say now, everyone, chuck my name in the YouTube chat and chuck questions so we can ask everyone some questions. I think the key thing to communicate is that all of this complexity, it's not really the most important thing. It's all really about the passengers and freight customers. So when it comes to all that complexity, fundamentally it has to work as a single functioning railway system. And that's kind of the point that I wanted to make before we go into questions, is this whole big complicated system is a single railway and should always be seen as such. All right, very briefly, the bonus episode tonight is going to be, we're going to look at the Labour Together transport report and then talk a little bit about Labour Together. That'll be at 9:30 tonight. So see you all for the bonus for the Patreon subscribers in the £5 and above tier. The next bit is really questions. Chuck the questions over, dear viewers. yeah, let's hear your questions. So, right. So, BR Price, I don't know who that could be. Would you and the guests join GBR's first grad apprentice scheme if they were having their first entry to rail again? Oh, that's an interesting question, Bonnie. Okay, so would you join the schemes that you did join originally if it was GBR versus the organizations that you did join? Kostas is nodding vigorously, so I'll start with Kostas and then maybe jump to Katie and Georgia.
Yeah, so as Georgia mentioned before, I didn't really have much of a picture of what I was really getting into with my apprenticeship. I always knew I wanted to go down the degree apprenticeship route rather than the traditional university route. But as Georgia mentioned, I wasn't a rail fanatic. And honestly, I'd never been on trains that many times before in my life. So, yeah, I was always quite concealed within Liverpool, never venturing far out. So I didn't have much of an idea. And taking it back to the question now, Network Rail and GBR, I would still go for the apprenticeship route because I think the opportunities that you get, and just you have to thinking about it logically. You're getting a degree, you're getting paid for it, and you're learning on the job and getting years worth of experience, all in one package. So whether that package comes under Network Rail or it comes under GBR, which in some cases I think could even give you more opportunities.
Yeah,
because
absolutely. One of the things that was lost with the demise of British Rail as it was the fact that both the apprenticeship and graduate schemes they forced you to go out and get the experience across the whole functioning railway. And to some extent, that's, Network Rail have done that with relationships with train operators. But yeah, as you say, GBR's return, GBR's kind of ascendancy would I would hope, strongly give opportunities to improve that interrelationship.
I think there could be both benefits and positives with the wide range of things. You could potentially lose that tailored aspect of it and maybe do little stints of placements everywhere. But I think the opportunities will be endless there. So I'd go for an apprenticeship, whether it was Network Rail or GBR.
Yeah, thanks, Kostas. Georgia and Katie, do either of you want to add to that at all?
I think I'm in a unique position because obviously Transport for Wales is not GBR, is separate a little bit.
Yep.
And I'm a bit more of a homebird, I will be honest, even though trains travel people. But maybe I would give it a go if I had enough confidence. I was an apprentice anyway 6 years ago, so it's been quite a bit of time, and I always just thought of trains as going to A to B, never knowing, again, the complex diagram.
Yeah.
And I was quite amazed at how much there was. So maybe I would if I, was a bit younger, obviously now.
So Georgia, Georgia, you've got, Kostas has got infrastructure side, you've got operator side experience. So from your perspective, maybe you have a different perspective. What do you think about, would you have entered the rail industry in the same way you had it been GBR rather than had that different structure been around at the time?
I think my answer would be very similar to Kostas's, because ultimately I didn't know anything about rail or its structure prior to joining, and having experienced my scheme, we were given so many opportunities, and as we've looked at the wider picture, you interface with so many different people. So as part of my scheme, I did spend a couple of weeks with West Midlands Rail Executive, and at Transport for West Mids, I spent a bit of time in Network Rail, and trying to understand bodies outside of my own. So I definitely think it would potentially only offer more opportunities, depending obviously of length of the scheme and the structured support within it. But I think there's definitely only more opportunities to experience more and learn more from different subject experts. So I don't think it would have deterred me. And it's been very interesting joining my company at this time when we're transferring over to public ownership. So I think it would be a very exciting time to actually experience the scheme, because you're just seeing everything new for the first time. So I I think it would be quite exciting.
Yeah. Gareth has asked a really... There's a lot of Gareths who watch Rail Natter. I'm sorry. This is not me. It's not me just typing away. Gareth, long-time friend of the show. Why did each of your guests choose the rail industry as opposed to any other? It's a really nice little question. Georgia, I'm just going to go back to you actually to answer that one because you nodded very vigorously. So yeah, why did you pick rail over
well, I think it's a good question because I had absolutely no interest in it prior to seeing the job advert. And I think it does just come back to the fact that I was a regular user of rail. I've experienced the operational realities of being a passenger. And ultimately, I was really motivated by the fact that I would be serving a customer and serving communities. And I think that's what got me interested in it. And then seeing the flexibility of the scheme I joined, because I was the first cohort, I was allowed to choose, like I had the whole company to choose from. So I feel like I'm still trying to figure out and demystify a talk, let alone the whole industry. But I definitely managed to achieve that within like my grad scheme and gaining a holistic view of a train operator. So I think I was completely sold when I joined the grad scheme and like the assessment day and saw how much buy-in we had from like senior leadership and how everyone just wanted to make sure that we got the best opportunities from it. So ultimately it took me getting to the interview stage for me to really be sold on the railway. But yeah, just serving communities and passengers was what motivated me and what I wanted my final output to be by joining the industry. So yeah.
Kostas, how about yourself? Did the railways call to you, or was it just fluke and it looked like an interesting job just like any other?
I feel like it might be a bit of both. When I was going through the interview stage, I sat there and I wondered, and I pictured myself in this role and what would it be like. And one thing definitely sprang to the forefront, and it was the impact that I could have, not only in a region, but the impact and a meaningful impact that I could have on the UK transport network. If I could contribute something to making passengers' experience better, so if that's just reducing delays through a bit of an upgrade to the signalling system, or renewals, or even big projects like that, that just really sprung out to me in the forefront. And I think I'm also a really kind of a hands-on person, like see it to believe it. So when I do see these big projects, it's exciting. Like, who wouldn't want to be involved in that?
Yeah,
as an engineer?
Absolutely. Yeah, for me, it's funny. Like, passenger stuff is obviously hugely impactful and very people. Yeah, because it's personal to lots of individuals. But for me, actually, it's the freight benefits that I enjoy. For the projects that I worked on when I was leading designs, it was those freight projects, because I knew how many lorries, I literally knew how many lorries I was taking off the road every year. So I knew that meant fewer road crashes, because lorries are responsible for a lot of fatal crashes on the road. It meant a reduction in road damage. It meant reduction in congestion. It meant the reduced emissions, all these things. It meant freight moved better. And it's really nice because you just immediately get those numbers for how many extra trains running. So I loved that. I always loved that. Katie, how about yourself?
Gratification.
Yeah, things like, exactly. Yeah, Katie, what? How about yourself? What did you come into the rail industry going, yes, rail, or?
I came from retail, so I worked in Boots, and basically my mom was like, do you want to work in retail all your life? And I was like, no. And I saw like the apprenticeship scheme, and I was also first of my cohort, like Georgia, and I thought, why not? So I tried it, and obviously we had the Core Valley Lines electrification going on, and I could see like big change happening, so I really wanted to be part of that. I wanted to move away from obviously the pacer trains and you're squeezing in like sardines. So I really did see a big opportunity, and it was unique coming into the company when it was still kind of forming itself. So you kind of just got that background knowledge of everything going on. And I just really, really enjoyed it. I couldn't recommend apprenticeships enough.
So a really interesting question from Katie Fenn, who asks, if you've already got experience in a role, for example, Katie's a web developer, are there schemes to help people retrain into railway-specific roles? Does anyone want to pick that up? And if not, I can give the answer, which is there are. The best thing that you can do is identify the sorts of roles that you're interested in, and speak to people doing those roles and understand what the transferable skills are. I'm seeing nods from my fellow guests, so that's reassuring. But also the professional institutions, are there running courses? So, for example, the Rail EI, what is now the PWI, still, it runs lots of different courses that pick up people with varying levels of skill and bring them up to a level of competence that enables them to do a specific role. And generally, the institutions and the organizations, the train operators, other company, Network Rail as are and GBR as it will be, runs various training schemes to get people, training courses internally to get people from one skill to the other. But so the other thing I'd say on that before I pass on to anyone who wants to pick that up is basically none of what I learned in my degree I use in my day job. And so like the reality is it's the ability to work in teams, to work with people, to know how to build a list of contacts, and then how to best use those lists of contacts to answer questions and solve problems is the most important thing, rather than the specifics of any given skill set. But something specific like web development, find the team that does that within any organization and speak to the one of the team supervisors or whoever and see what they have to say. People are always receptive. If you find someone on LinkedIn who's got a title that looks similar to the sort of thing you're interested in, message them. Chances are they'd be, if you're not a generic recruitment assistant, they're going to be interested to have a little chat without a problem. And anyone else got any thoughts on that one? It's a really good question, Katie.
Hello.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Katie. Yes.
Yeah.
Sheffield Katie to Pontypridd Katie. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think as soon as you kind of show that you work hard and you've got not relevant experience always, but as long as you work hard, I think people are always open to you to kind of join in different teams sometimes, or even taking you under your wing. I've had a couple of times where I've been on different projects where I've known nothing about like actor travel, for example, or bus, but they've given me a chance to have a go at it. So I just keep yourself open, I would say.
Yeah, it kind of neatly answers a bit of another question actually, which is from Adam, is asking, if you want to go into the railway, is it best to go for a role that you desire, such as dispatch, or work your way up through another? Well, there's two things I would say to that. Firstly, there are various routes to reach roles. So if you find another role, you generally, once you're in through the door, you can find your way to a role that you perhaps have an interest in, even if the specific role isn't available. The other one is that I'm hoping GBR gives us more opportunities to, for example, insource things like cleaning of facilities management, cleaning of trains, because giving that to a third party outsourcing company that with staff on minimum wage that have no opportunity then to progress and perhaps potentially be cleaning the train and then shadowing a guard and maybe eventually becoming a driver or something like that. That was a classic pathway in British Rail. And Andrew Haynes himself, who was CEO of Network Rail very recently, said himself that he was a baggage handler and then has found his way up to chief exec of NR. And that's a pathway that is not open anymore. And, so I'm hoping GBR gives us the opportunity to rethink some of those instinctive 90s, 2000s era outsourcing to provide more pathways for people who maybe don't have the ability to fund or access a degree, or even potentially are nervous or have reasons for not being able to access an apprenticeship. So anyone else have thoughts on that particular point of routes of do you go straight for the role you want, or are there ways to get to it? I think pretty much we covered it. I'll have if anyone wants to jump in, that's fine, but I'll flick through because Bonnie jumped in with another question, which I thought was a fun one. So I'm going to scroll back and see if I can find Bonnie. I'm outing you with your. There we are. Okay, right. So fine. What are the guest and your dream jobs within rail? Okay, that's a fun one to end on. Actually, that's a good one to end on before we go to that. So dream job in rail, and you are allowed to say the one I'm in now. So I'll start, and then you can all have a think. So I've been in my dream job a couple of times now in the rail industry for various shenanigans reasons. And the reality is that you when you reach as you get to a point in the rail industry, partly because it's so complicated and so diverse, interesting new opportunities avail themselves that make you think, oh, actually, that's delicious. I want to get stuck into that. And so you can be in your dream job successive times, I find, in the rail industry. And I kind of feel like that's been true for me for a couple of roles now, going from professional head of discipline to the guy who shouts about test tracks repeatedly. So yeah, I think the one I'm in now, but also possibly another one that I don't know about yet, is my answer to that. Kostas, what do you think about that? Dream job? Do you know what your dream job is, and do you know how you're going to get there? Or are you in it now?
Do you know, at the minute, I probably don't have much of a clear idea of what my dream job would be, but I would say that I'm a very ambitious person. So being somewhere where in the future where I can take a leadership role, maybe managing a team of engineers, something like that, contributing more to project, maybe several projects at the same time. That's kind of where I see myself in the future.
Fab. Georgia?
I think I'm too new in my role to talk about leaving it just yet.
Yeah. Well, this role's nice, but I'm going somewhere else. Yeah, that's it.
Sorry, I'm just going to leave right now, 6 months in. But no, I think on the grad scheme, I absolutely loved my time with stations and control. So I definitely love over my career to spend a bit more time in those two areas.
Fab. Katie, how about you? What's your idea of a dream role within the industry?
It's mostly like what you're working on, I think. For me as a project manager, I think I see myself probably leaning more towards either sustainability or active travel, which I quite like.
And that's one of the things that's interesting, and the right way to go, because we've just spent a whole episode talking about the rail industry, but actually the ideal situation is that we care less about the rail industry and actually we talk about sustainable transport more broadly and actually think less like railway people and more like, well,
multimodal,
the whole picture. And that's one of the things that Wales is way ahead of everyone else certainly in Britain on. Way ahead of Scotland, way ahead of everyone else. Wales is really is living and breathing that, which I think is extremely exciting. Right. It's time. No, you don't want to see that. It's time. It's time to talk about young rail professionals, because we've had the three of you have joined me. It's been extremely kind of you to do so. And you've all joined via Young Rail Professionals. And it's the chance for us to talk a little bit about Rail Week and a bit about YRP. So I'm going to return to you guys. Who wants to pick up first and give the Rail Week pitch? Hands in the air for whoever wants to dive in. There's everyone's like, go on, Katie. Yeah, fab.
I can talk about what we've done so far this week.
Perfect.
If you want. We've done 2 webinars. So on Monday, we were joined by Amira, May and Finley. Finley's also part of my committee as well, talking about futures thinking. So in the lens of the Future Generations Act, which is quite unique to Wales. So I don't know if you know about it, but it's how we create schemes for the future generations and what impacts they'll cause, especially with climate change. And Welsh language as well is considered in there, and equality. So definitely look that up if you can, if you've got the time. I have recorded it, so hopefully it'll be on the YouTube channel soon. We also had a webinar on Global Centre of Rail Excellence. I have to remember the acronym. So many acronyms in rail.
It's ONFIN. It's the big circle they're hoping to build it ONFIN.
Yeah. I was just talking about timelines and when it's going to be built and what it'll be potentially run on there, what potential partners will be part of that. Again, it'll probably be on the YouTube soon. We'd also did 2 depot tours. We did one at the Taftswell depot tour, which we did last year. And we also today we went to Canton depot tour, which was very fun. And then we've got a social on Thursday. And we're also going to the apprenticeship fair as well. So we do a very lots of topics and events throughout the week, just to highlight why it's good to work in the railway industry and try and get early careers as well on board.
Fab. Kostas, your chance to pitch what's going on in your corner of YRP for Rail Week and beyond.
Yeah, so I'm a co-manager for Rail Week alongside Jamie Bailey, and we've had this discussion for a long time now, for a few months, of how we're going to run this Rail Week, and we've come to it, and I think it's a success. Like, we have got events all around the UK, and as Katie mentioned, we've got heritage visits, we've got socials, we've got tech talks. All of this is just fundamental to what YRP is, promote, inspire, develop. I think if I can just bring back to the point from one of the questions from the chat, there was a question that said, how do I get into the railway industry if I maybe don't have the relevant qualifications? Well, with YRP, you can also have people, young rail professionals, that join YRP, and they can go and experience these things. Rail Week is for all of our members, maybe some that aren't even in the railway industry yet, but have an interest in trying to progress and develop in that sort of direction. So, attending events like these, and we've still got more to come.
Yep.
We're only halfway through the week. This is an opportunity for you to possibly, if you apply for one of those jobs and you get interviewed, bring YRP up and explain what you did on one of these events, on one of these site visits, and it's a talking point and ultimately an interview. And when you go for a job role, you need some talking points to differentiate yourself and secure that job. So I think it's important. And the second point is, it's important for all the people who organize it as well. For example, for me, being a co-manager, I've been able to take on some leadership responsibilities where maybe in my work, because I'm quite new, I'm only 1.5 years in, I don't really get that chance to get that responsibility. So all of our coordinators for Rail Week and for all of our events, they can learn something from being a part of YRP and being an organizer as well.
Absolutely. And Georgia, you get to round us off with the final pitch for what's going on in your corner of YRP world for Rail Week, and anything else you want to. You're getting the chance to give the last word
Well, that
as
was
well.
perfect.
No
That was
pressure.
a perfect description as to what YRP Rail Week is all about. So we focused on trying to achieve some core, like a few core events. So we had an Interrail stand at New Street in collaboration with Network Rail as well, and I think that got a lot of good attention, engagement, again, just from those who might not have considered a career in rail. So that was on Tuesday. Tomorrow we have a tech talk on very light rail. So if anyone's listening and around the West Midlands and wants to attend it, please sign up, because we still do have spaces. Tomorrow we were also going to have a visit to Willenhall and Darlaston new stations. Ooh. But again, be excited, because it's been postponed to the 26th. So if anyone's listening and also wants to attend,
particularly if you just watch the rail natter on West Midlands Transport. That's get out and get
sorry. Yes, but they can multitask. And then also next week we have our Politics in Rail question time style event. So lots going on.
Yeah, a huge amount. Georgia, Katie, Kostas, thank you so much for joining and sharing your thoughts, insights as young rail professionals. An absolute delight to have you, and have you endure me in full maniac mode as I'm not only just pulling levers and steam shooting in all directions, but also driving my chaotic industry structure slide. It's been an absolute delight. It only remains, everyone watching, thank you so much for doing so. Thoughts, what jobs have we missed? Pop them in the comments below. Do share your thoughts and stories from your perspective in the industry. It only remains for Katie, Kostas, Georgia and I to vigorously wave into cameras. We say cheerio and see you next time. Cheerio, everybody. Cheerio. Cheerio.